Modern crisis of sexual market, the slut walk, sexual emancipation, the adult entertainment industry, gender feminism, practice of casual sex, and so on. What do females search for? Is G-spot real? Do women prefer monogamy or short-term sexual gratification? The topic of gender and sexuality being emotionally charged and subjected to various political agendas never gets a fair treatment. Thus, in this video, I will present a brief sketch of female sexuality, beginning from cellular biology up to the modern feminism and sexual emancipation. I'll explore each layer of analysis along with drawing necessary cross-references, and we'll try to see how different aspects of female sexuality hang together so that we can see the bigger picture. Once upon a time, there were isogametes of somewhat equal size and speed. Anybody could fuse with anybody else. After mating, they contribute an equal number of genes and equal amount of food. Because of variations in speed and size, isogametes evolved into two completely opposite sex cells. One became small and fast, refusing to contribute food reserves, and the other large and stationary. Hence, right from the outset, we're struck with the primordial opposition between quantity and quality. Sperm cells are replenished at a rate of roughly 12 million per hour, while a female produces a fixed supply of egg cells of about 400 ova. This therefore places a limit on the number of children a female can have, but the number of children a male can have is virtually unlimited. Female exploitation begins here. This process carved out a runaway trend for two divergent sexual strategies. Small investment exploitative, in which sperm cells like heat-seeking missiles find large ova to squeeze in their genetic material without any metabolic commitment, and large investment honest, in which a large immobile egg cell provides food supply to their embryos. Medium-sized intermediates would have been penalized because they didn't enjoy the advantages of either extreme strategies. Hence, egg cells evolved strong membranes hard to penetrate, whereas sperm cells evolved wiggly tails to move quickly and heads with fluid inside to soften the shell of the opposite sex. However, the asymmetry going on here is rigged in favor of sperm cells, fast enough to fertilize potentially unlimited egg cells without much investment. This leads us to the evolved defense mechanisms of the female sex, which I will explore in the next chapter. This layer thus can be summed up in the unifying principle of asymmetry, resulting from the mismatch in interests of the both sex cells. Here we enter into the layer of animal behavior to trace the evolution of female mating strategy as a preventive tool from exploitation. Evolutionary stable strategy that females evolved is termed as coy or domestic bliss strategy. Carriers of large egg cells do not engage in quick mating so that they can test the trustworthiness of a potential mate. If in the business world time is money, then in mating world time is sexual opportunity. Males are presented with a choice: you either sacrifice your time or you leave. As males are assessed by criteria of fidelity and domesticity, they are forced to prove their trustworthiness by making a sacrifice of time and resources, which leads us to the courtship display. Male deers fighting with their antlers, African wavebirds presenting their nests to females, bullfrogs singing serenadas, humans bringing meat and crafted seashells to their potential mates, which are all examples of courtship display. By insisting on a long engagement period, a female weeds out casual suitors and only finally copulates with a male who has proved his qualities of fidelity and perseverance in advance. Feminine coyness is in fact very common among animals, and so are prolonged courtship or engagement periods. Thinking that casual short-term sex is primitive, thus, is completely unreasonable. Konrad Lorenz, the grandfather of ethology, states, "To describe instant copulation as animal or bestial is quite misleading, for in higher wild animals such behavior is extremely rare. It is characteristic only of domestic animals, since in the interest of easy stock breeding, man has bred out all highly differentiated behavioral patterns of mating." In the next chapter, we will look at how self-domestication of humans could have led to polyamorous mating strategies, diverging from what's known as a standard narrative. Hence, natural selection selected sexual selection and female choosiness as a successful strategy. Females who were indiscriminate in their choice of opposite sex wouldn't have made it to the next generation. Among 4,000 species of mammals, the vast majority are polygynous, meaning males can copulate with multiple females, whereas females bear the burden of internal fertilization, gestation, and lactation. However, note that polygyny doesn't necessitate that a female will exclusively mate with one male. This mismatch of interests, also known as battle of the sexes, is nicely encapsulated in the word mammal. The immobile and resource-investing nature of an axle translates into the breastfeeding and nurturing female mammal, who has to sustain and protect the offspring after the whole 9 months of gestation. Hence, in the world where contraception doesn't exist, females have been equipped with sharp sense of discriminating trustworthy males from possible exploiters. Social experiment done by David Buss and his colleagues inquired females and males about what would make them angrier, if their beloved person had wild sexual experience in the past or deep emotional attachment with someone. Males predominantly preferred emotional attachment, whereas females preferred the first option. In another study, which has been replicated a number of times, college students were asked about whether they would engage in casual sex with a complete stranger. Majority of males gave a positive response, whereas the vast majority of females refused the opportunity. Other studies demonstrated that females have extraordinary olfactory acuity when it comes to sexual selection. Women judged the t-shirt odors of symmetrical men to be the most attractive and deemed the odors of asymmetrical men to be repulsive. 4 independent studies have replicated the finding. Another study revealed that females are sexually attracted to the following behavioral patterns: frequent short-term glances at women, more space maximization movement, frequent location changes, non-reciprocal touching with other people, and smaller number of closed body movements. All these studies point to one simple fact, namely the female checklist is way longer and complex than that of males. Evolved to guess the qualitative importance of possible mate, whereas male choice is more quantitative in its nature and way simpler. However, this abstract model becomes way more complicated when it comes to social evolution and the emergence of high civilizations. Before getting to specifically human evolution of female sexuality, I want to sum up this layer in the unifying principle of testing, where by means of coy strategy, males are being assessed for their fidelity, domesticity, and resourcefulness. When it comes to evolution of Homo sapiens, standard mating models become more complicated, and hence I will explore theories that diverge from the standard narrative. For this reason, I reread the horniest book that has ever been written, Sex at Dawn by Christopher Ryan. The authors challenge the model of female sexuality and mating strategy that can be encapsulated in following principles. Females are Machiavellian in their choice of mates, which is solely based on their ability to provide resources exemplified by their hunting skills. Further, females have evolved dual mating strategy, whereby for the purpose of long-term relationship and child rearing, they choose less masculine males, who are more stable and trustworthy, but ideally cheat on them with gigachads so that their children can have the best genetics and best father to rear them. Contrary to this view, authors diverge from this Machiavellian/Hobbesian view of sexuality and present evidence for polyamorous prehistory, challenging the Victorian idea of females being less sexually interested and monogamous. Here's a quick breakdown of key arguments. Instead of looking at chimps as moral organisms to explain human behavior, we should consult bonobos. Bonobos, unlike chimps and like humans, show signs of domestication as they are highly social and exhibit altruistic, cooperative, and reconciliatory behavior. They are way less aggressive than other apes, and what's most important, their sexual behavior is way more loose. Female bonobos mate with multiple males. Sex in their society doesn't solely serve reproduction, but functions as an anti-stress and reconciliatory tool. Authors take sperm competition to be the evidence of polyandry. As a result of sperm competition, the mass of human testicles relative to body size is relatively high, which exceeds bonobos and gorillas but stands below that of chimps. Males who spend 100% of their time with their wives generate approximately 400 million sperm cells, but when they have to spend 5% of their time with their wives, the number doubles at approximately 800 million. Hence, after the period of hunting, males would quote-unquote refill their mate's reproductive tracts so that it could prevent the entrance of other male sperm. Authors support the view that reason humans have mushroom-shaped genitalia has to do with scooping out other male sperm so that yours can get through. One experiment using artificial male genitalia demonstrated that it is an effective scoop to remove fluid from the vaginal tract. Further, unlike other primates, humans really enjoy sex, lasting longer and engaging in thrusting motion, which serves the purpose of vacuum cleaning a female from the semen of a previous mate. Also, authors take the fact that human female emits loud voices during the intercourse to be the evidence of polyandry, where it serves the function of attracting other males to join the ongoing sexual activity. Authors even suggest that males enjoying specific type of pornography where multiple men have sex with one female to be the evidence of prehistoric polyandry. Based on Hardy's hypothesis, authors believe that females evolved concealed ovulation to confuse males of their paternity. Hence, if men can't be certain, then multiple males can engage in sexual activity with a single female and father the same child. Lastly, they present examples of Aboriginal tribes such as Bari, H, Paraha, Yanomami, and others where polyandry is practiced. Some of those societies believe that in order for a baby to grow in a woman's body, a continuous flow of sperm is necessary. Hence, multiple males help the mother in growing her baby by donating sperm. Further, in societies where food and resources are shared somewhat equally, females resort to polygamy, as there is no one specific subset of dominant alpha male. For instance, in Egg of Paraguay, 75% of females resort to short-term mating strategy. No wonder why egalitarian political activists are pushing polygamy and tying capitalism to monogamy. Turns out that economic conditions and resource allocation cannot be divorced from sexuality. Now, I think I did enough to entertain you with this ideal prehistory of sexual communism and Rousseauian romanticism of peaceful nature. One of the founders of modern evolutionary psychology, David Buss, states that there are no paradises populated with sexually liberated people. Those mating strategies have nothing to do with casual sex or the modern understanding of sexual emancipation. Rather, they are adaptations to the environment, which is extremely harsh, violent, and brutish. A place where a modern egalitarianist would never live. Plus, males who have sex with the same female are almost always brothers and hence genetically related, which in and of itself prevents jealousy and intraspecific aggression. Also, we can't just decontextualize mating strategies of Aboriginal tribes and inspect them in isolation, without dealing with all accompanying practices and environmental conditions that are causally connected to those practices. Isn't it convenient to separate such mating strategies from less pleasant occurrences like frequent warfare, physical abuse and rape of unprotected women in places where there are no police or constitution, infanticide of unwanted children, and the male practice of killing the offspring of newly conquered females? I doubt that the author of this book, who romanticizes these mating strategies, would ever engage in a deadly battle in which a male must prove his prowess by killing other tribesmen. What fascinates me is how people can play dumb and think that polyandry has no inherent connection with those violent practices. So here's the statistics for those who believe that all the warfare and human violence is a result of Western civilization and colonialism. And I want you to consider that the bottom section of the United States and Europe involves 2 world wars. Before answering the questions about female sexuality that I posed at the beginning, I want to tell you a story about the curious case of Margaret Mead. In her book, Coming of Age in Samoa, she describes this peaceful, idyllic society where adolescent girls are free to have sex with whomever they like. Continuing the 20th century anthropological trend that sexual inhibition is a product of Western patriarchy, she claimed that Samoans never constrained females in their sexual preferences. Hence, monogamy is a cultural invention of the West and has no biological basis. Well, this book came out in 1928, and until 1980s, no one questioned the validity of those claims. Then, unlike Mead, who only stayed in Samoa for 4 months, Austrian anthropologist Derek Freeman spent 6 years conducting research in Samoa and learned their native language. Long story short, turns out Samoans engage in aggressive behavior and frequent warfare, and they place great value on virginity to the point where they have special virginity tests and ceremonial defloration of women on their wedding days. Samoans may even beat or kill their daughters if they don't turn out to be virgins on their wedding night. But you may ask how Mead came up with the story. Freeman also tracked down the origins of this legend. Well, believe it or not, she basically interviewed old women who were just joking with her about how they would go out at night with boys and engage in sexual activity. Those women told Freeman that they came up with wild sex stories for a young, ignorant visitor who was anxiously writing everything down. Now, females engaging in short-term sexual relations with men in most cases is not a choice but rather a symptom. Several studies demonstrate that absence of investing father during childhood is one context that increases the incidence of casual sex. The derogation of masculinity and men and poor ability to maintain sexual and emotional adjustments with one male are also symptoms of father absence. Evolutionary model predicts that father-absent girls will perceive that male parental effort is not crucial and hence engage in short-term mating strategy. Further studies show that daughters of families separated by divorce were practicing so-called fast and early mating strategy. Hence, we need to learn how to differentiate free will from specific evolved defense mechanisms. Now I would like to present the theory of what I believe to be the most holistic author on this topic. Leonard Schlein, in his book Sex, Time and Power, attempts to explore how all unique adaptations of human female sexuality, such as cryptic ovulation, multiple sustained orgasms, G-spot, all year-round sexual receptivity, heavy blood loss, early onset of menopause, constant anemia from iron deficiency and other associated adaptations, hang together. The ovulatory period, also known as estrus, is everything but concealed in the animal kingdom. In primates, it is usually accompanied by swelling of the perineal and genital areas. This is also accompanied by vaginal discharge. Female dogs, for example, produce pheromones that arouse touch so that they can be motivated to mount them. Human female ovulation is not only concealed, lacking a clearly visible manifestation, but its counterpart, the blood loss after the uterine lining is shed, is greatly amplified. Out of 270 different species of primates, only 31 menstruate. But only humans lose significant amounts of blood along with vital proteins and iron. This predisposes women to constant anemia, which is caused by iron deficiency. There are additional sources of iron loss that females have to face, transferring huge amounts of iron to the growing fetus, losing iron during delivery, breastfeeding, females developing polyps and fibroids in their uterine tract, and hemorrhoids, which became a new thing after we started walking upright. Now, venous blood flow has to move against the force of gravity. Further, upright walking during blood loss attracts predators as vaginal discharge contains highly odorable substances. This already hints as to why humans evolved the tradition of locking up women during menstruation, considering them to be unclean. Also, in the days of heavy blood loss, females are most susceptible to bacterial infection. Cryptic ovulation and year-round sexual receptivity, where females can mate nearly anytime, greatly increase the amount of jealousy and intraspecific aggression. This led humans to invent draconian laws to prevent cheating and sexual deviations. Also, not knowing when it is the best time to copulate increases energy and time demands. You see, except few notable cases, other creatures expend minimal time and energy copulating. In some birds and mammals, it happens in a matter of seconds. Human investment in terms of time spent thinking about sex, planning, wooing, and actually engaging in the act exceeds that of any other creature. Further, human females, unlike other animals, seem to enjoy sex and experience multiple and sustained orgasms, which is another unique adaptation. Even in those primates where female orgasm probably exists, their outward manifestation is still pale in comparison with those of women attaining their apex. Now, how do all of these things make sense from an evolutionary standpoint? According to Schlein, reason women bleed so copiously every month is so that humans could anticipate the future. The author claims that all of those unique adaptations that has to do with female sexuality is directly associated with major human advancements such as ego consciousness, ability of foresight, and hence the concept of time, increased language capabilities, big game communal meat hunting, and what's most important, the human ability of self-restraint and hence the free won't. Here's a quick breakdown of how all of those pieces fit together to form a bigger picture. After a human cranium increased in size, childbearing became a lot harder, as the baby has to pass through the bony pelvic canal. Hence, death during delivery became a new black plague for human females. According to Schlein, the first female who realized that sex and having a child are causally connected was the one who developed the ability to say no. The novel adaptation of the prefrontal cortex, which is last to mature, responsible for higher executive function and impulse control, evolved in females. Females, with their new ability to say no, so that excruciating pain and possible death during delivery could have been avoided, launched a new chapter in human evolution. Human female was the first animal on the planet Earth with the ability to consciously refuse having sex, even if she was experiencing ovulation, where sex drive is at its highest. Here, sex acquired new ontological dimension. The price of sex dramatically increased, and thus males had to become more creative to get laid. Grunting and mumbling was no longer an option. Here's how cryptic ovulation contributes to this process. Not only females are less aware about their most fertile window, but males are also blinded, unable to tell when it is the best time to approach their possible mate. Before getting to how other mentioned features make sense, I'd like to have a short digression on comedy by Aristophanes. Famous playwright tells us a story about how females refusing to have sex with their husbands ended the war. Apart from hilarious scenes where horny husbands with uncontrollable erections are trying to access their wives, who have locked themselves up in Acropolis, the symbol of Athena in this case, the play offers us alternative understanding of female power, which I guess slightly differs from modern conception of what it means to be a girl boss. Lysistrata, an Athenian woman, is distraught with the fact that females are easily accessible and demands them to find enough power to refuse having sex. She gathered women from Greek city-states to present her plan for uniting Greece and ending the Peloponnesian War. Women should refuse having sex until the Treaty of Peace is signed amongst men. Relevant to the video play offers us three key themes: Neanderthal women, menopausal women, and free won't. Neanderthals, contrary to our intuition, had bigger brains than humans and probably high spatial and mathematical skills. Neanderthal women were as big and strong as male Homo sapiens. After interbreeding with Neanderthals, Homo sapiens have undergone literal technological and artistic boom. There are new emerging studies linking Neanderthal heritage and specific human mental abilities. Now, when Lysistrata presented her plan, women became frustrated and didn't want to give up sexual pleasures. Lampedo, the Spartan woman, symbolizing strength and virility, was the first one to agree with Lysistrata to engage in sex strike. This, I believe, represents a new type of woman exhibiting high-level self-control and power to say no. Further, Lysistrata was helped by the older women of Athens to seize the Acropolis. As Schlein and numerous other authors claim, menopause created new caste of females who lost their femininity and became more masculine, serving the role of transmitting wisdom and experience to young grandchildren. And what's most important, they were the ones who taught youngsters everything about sex. Finally, I want to explore the concept of free won't, symbolized by Athena, who takes the side of Lysistrata. Athena, being masculine androgynous goddess of wisdom who sprang forth from Zeus's head, guards females from horny husbands who think that women belong to them and they have no right to refuse having sex. In the end, the sex strike, organized by the power of Athenian prefrontal cortex, achieves success and peace reigns. Comedy ends with the Song of Praise dedicated to Athena, which is also of symbolic importance. Now, getting back to females' newly evolved prefrontal cortex, allowing them to say no, I will quickly sum up Schlein's hypothesis. Although the author doesn't use this concept, the reason why those adaptations have stayed in the gene pool of Homo sapiens is because of acceptation. Process where traits acquire new functions that they initially didn't evolve for. So here's how the story goes. G-spot, first discovered by German gynecologist Ernst Grafenberg, is located in the superior wall of the vagina. This location, although hardly accessible during sexual intercourse, is directly positioned to receive the pressing head of delivering baby. The neural plexus of G-spot acts as a morphine pump to make the excruciating pain of childbirth bearable. There are multiple records of females experiencing unforgettable orgasm during childbirth. Because of high endorphin release, females generally don't remember most details of childbirth. According to Schlein, G-spot and multiple sustained female orgasms evolved as a compensatory mechanism of the female's ability to say no. Menstrual cycle, on the other hand, averaging at 27.5 days, is not long enough to be left unnoticed and not short enough to be considered insignificant. The periodicity of menses gave rise to the concept of time and an ability to expect the future. This will be of utmost importance for male hunters, using foresight as a primary weapon for bringing down large animals. Hence, the ability of foresight led to the evolution of big game hunting, serving the function of gaining access to females. Sustaining oneself without risking to hunt such dangerous animals would have been perfectly possible, but as we are going to see, the iron deficiency of females had to be addressed one way or another. The concept of time and emergence of calendars, which requires abstract thought, was also aided by synchronizing the inner subjective physiological clock with something objective and out there. Hence, lunar cycles being synchronized with the menstrual cycle was the key innovation evidenced by lunar calendars existing in the prehistoric period. According to author, there is a reason why socially sanctioned sex after wedding is called a honeymoon. Number of ethnicities and tribes refer to menses as the moon. The English mensis, month, moon, and measurement have their roots in the Latin words mens and mensis, and the Greek word menes. Jean Gebser takes the patriarchal mental consciousness structure of abstract thought, geometry, and discursive thinking to emerge from the wrath of Achilles, with which Iliad opens up. The menace of Achilles is a new form of directed wrath, which then will be controlled by Athena, whose other name is Minerva. Turns out, according to Schlein, male-associated power of reason first emerged in women. The menstrual cycle was not only synchronized with lunar cycles, but also with other females. The Wellesley effect describes the phenomenon whereby females experience alignment of their cycles if they are living together. According to Schlein, communal female gatherings and seclusion during the bleeding days paved the way for the human ability of ego consciousness and subjective introspection. Mood swings associated with blood loss makes females more alert and frustrated about their inner situation, which provokes the power of introspection and self-consciousness. Menopause, as mentioned, created a new caste of masculinized women, who, according to Schlein, were the first to come up with the tradition of circumcision. Circumcision is an act of enculturation, whereby the inherent asymmetry between the time males and females need to achieve an orgasm is corrected, as circumcised males can last longer. This is the process of emancipating yourself from the shackles of nature. As we're going to see, after the advent of civilizations, sexual strategies acquire new ontological dimension. Heavy menstrual bleeding stayed in our society as it created new challenges for males. Now they have to come up with big game hunting, with the ability of self-restraint. Human hunters are unique in that they don't eat their prey at the site of killing, but rather bring it back to the tribe so that the iron deficiency of their possible mates can be corrected. In nearly all Aboriginal tribes, males are selected for their ability to hunt, and hence meat is recognized to be of the highest value. If male is not able to bring the meat, then he's not worthy and hence won't get laid. According to Schlein, the best possible date would look like this. You invite her to have a dinner with candles fired up to simulate a prehistoric fireplace. Then you order filet mignon, which is positioned in the most inaccessible interior region of animal's abdomen. Because it has low collagen content, it won't prevent iron absorption. With the aid of candlelight, female can detect iron's presence glistening on the filet's cut red surface. Extraordinary verbal skills and human ability to speak, according to Schlein, also evolved as a way for males to have sex. Now, as it became a lot harder to appeal to females, males had to evolve a complex set of characteristics. Human males are the only ones who can be brutish and violent in one scenario, such as hunting and fighting, let's say, and then in a matter of minutes, getting back to home, become tender, lovely, and caring. The sense of humor and high verbal skills thus evolved from the demands of sex. Studies show that when asked what scares you the most about the opposite sex, females state that they might get killed by a man, whereas males dread of being laughed at. I think this finding now makes sense. Nietzsche opens up beyond good and evil by suggesting that if we consider truth to be a woman, then it would inevitably follow that previous philosophers were too stiff, clumsy, and dogmatic to have captured her. This nicely encapsulates how abstract thought and need for mental flexibility could have emerged out of men's attempt to get access to their potential mate. Last but not least, when menstrual cycle begins roughly at the age of 12, females experience what's known as anovulation. Egg cells do not mature enough to be fertilized. This equips women with the time to get to know their peers, who are the most giggly and uncontrollable in teenage years. This explains the phenomenon of boy craze, where a teenage girl is obsessed with figuring out how boys' brain works, which equips her with famous female intuition. Period of female anovulatory adolescence evolved a sensitive learning period of sexual strategy. This explains why there is an asymmetry between adolescent girls who have matured earlier and boys who can't keep up before the age of 20. This time window helps women to study male psychology in its most uncontrollable period. There is an interesting principle that male is a female's breeding experiment. To further this idea, it seems that male features with which she can boast is an extension of female's homeostasis, so that she can keep her blood work in check, inventing males to serve all aforementioned functions. As I adopt Goethean organismic and holistic stance on science, I aim at uncovering prime principles which encapsulate the wholeness of what is being studied at a given moment. Hence, I summarize female biological sexuality in the principle of security, as every single adaptation that I spoke about ultimately serves the security of a female and her possible offspring. In the following chapters, I will try to find the prime principle of the female psyche. Here I'm going to present a quick sketch of how males have attempted to emancipate, control, and subjugate female sexuality, which is inextricably linked with the emergence of high civilizations. First, I need to explain why females are associated with nature and males with culture. Nature, with its volcanic eruptions and natural catastrophes, is emotionally erratic. Females, because of their frequent mood swings associated with hormonal fluctuations, are more protean and shape-shifting than males, who have constant levels of testosterone in their blood. Women have a period of highest femininity when estrogen levels peak, and a period of highest masculinity when testosterone concentration is higher than that of other androgen. This specific period of blood loss and low estrogen high testosterone condition, where females are most dangerous, has following significance. First, she scares off his mate to go for hunting so that he can return with the meat after 14 days, right when the ovulation comes back. Secondly, it points to female bisexual and shape-shifting nature. And thirdly, it probably gave rise to the myth of vagina dentata, which I'm going to look at in a second. Also, women have to accept the fate imposed by nature that something is going to take place every single month, which is in accordance with nature being associated with fate and determinism. Females are more interested in humans than in inanimate objects, latter being the favorite toy of males, initially serving the function of attracting females and later becoming a tool of emancipation from the womb of the Great Mother. Finally, females are less modular than males. Men are more likely to be diagnosed with autism and savantism, where one mental function is hypertrophied at the expense of others. Further, male brain is more lateralized than the female one, meaning that certain brain regions take up specific functions and inhibit corresponding brain areas in a neighboring hemisphere. That's why females recover from strokes way easier than males. It also seems that what we frequently hear from feminists, namely the heterosexual male, has a biological reality to it. The most highly specialized and dichotomous brain belongs to a right-handed heterosexual male. Over 97% of the language centers of this subset are located in this men's left hemispheres. This extreme skewing of brain function is not present in the brains of either right or left-handed females, gays and lesbians, or left-handers of either sex. All three of these categories have their language centers and the other cortical functions more evenly distributed between the two hemispheres. Most probably, this anthrotype was responsible for wresting reproductive capabilities from women so that the powers of the eternal feminine could be neutralized. I come to believe that males adopting the capacity to bear children as a form of monomyth. Athena springs forth from Zeus's head. Biblical Jacob gives birth from his thigh, which is actually his genitalia. Aphrodite was born from the white foam produced by the severed genitals of Uranus. Unlike pagan myths where life emerges out of Mother Nature or Dionysian chaos, in biblical corpus, life springs from the intentional and directional power of logos. Virgin births are another form of masculinization, where females are used as temporary vessels to harbor male logos. Not only that, but Yahweh, who is referred as He, creates humans with the technological power of ceramics. But here's the catch. After constructing Adam from the clay, He breathes life into him. Breath in Hebrew being ruach is a feminine noun, hinting at the importance of the Holy Ghost, which is the last gasp of female power. However, when Bible was translated to Greek, ruach became pneuma, which is a neutral noun, finally emancipating mental consciousness from the boundless belly of the Great Mother. Here we get a shift from the feminine trinity of three M's, menarche, motherhood, and menopause, into the masculine trinity of Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Now, this shift shouldn't be understood as some form of sexist revolution against female sex. Rather, we're dealing with the masculinization and virilization of the psyche and of the intellect. Contrary to our intuition, Christianity was a primary force against female infanticide. Not only that, but the evidence used by theologians for Jesus' resurrection comes from the record of females who visited the empty tomb. We witness a solidification of a new anthrotype of a masculine females who have adopted positions of nuns and scholars in Christian societies. In following sections, we're going to see how feminism emerges out of this anthrotype of smart, hyper-intellectual masculine women. The idea of an automaton, and hence an ability to create humans without the aid of feminine, takes its root from ancient Egypt. The very first culture where we see a transition from understanding femininity as a pure fertility to a pure individual, represented by the bust of Nefertiti, with refined edges and contours. Egypt is the first to come up with the art of makeup, emphasizing female beauty by applying charcoal. The history of males attempting to animate mechanically built carcasses is up and running even today with the promises of artificial intelligence. Western alchemy of Paracelsus, with its instructions of how to conceive a human being from the horse's uterus and male sperm, up to the monster of Frankenstein who was unable to socialize because of the lack of feminine breath, deserves another video. Now I want to touch the topic of male fear of female mystique. Imagine a first conscious man who realized that after sex, his genitalia was covered in blood. In Native American culture, there is a myth of vagina dentata, where the disappearing genitalia of males can be eaten by the opposite sex. The femme fatale, as a masculine devouring version of the Great Mother archetype, is a new fear of a madular masculine male who lives in a perpetual attempt to escape the underworld of uterine depth. Male-invented video cameras as extensions of their genitalia became a new tool, according to Camille Paglia, with which he is able to look through the depth of female uterine reality. Hence, she takes pornography to be another attempt to relieve the anxiety of unfathomable depth of a female mystique. After the advent of neo-masculine consciousness, males have identified new diseases, one of them being the wandering womb, a mythical ancestor of Freudian hysteria. Physicians would apply different flavors to female genitalia, thinking that because it supposedly resembles a nose, a uterus would stay in her place and won't go up or down to harass her psyche. Now, this is no joke. Females had to endure quite a suffering so that they could be cured from the wandering womb. Lastly, psychology as a Western male discipline is yet another tool to understand female depth. Jung's claim that males are simple as they are dominated by logos, whereas females are more complex as they are more psychological, is nicely encapsulated in the etymology of psychology. Psyche is a name of a mortal female who became a goddess, tortured by an envious Aphrodite for her beauty. This explains the purpose of psychology, namely to explore the uterine depth of the eternal feminine. Hence, in the next chapter of psychology, we will look at the myth of Cupid and Psyche. I want to sum up this chapter in the principle of masculinization, where a new tension between the medular masculine mind and Heraclitean feminine interwoven psyche struggle, leading to creativity and cultural innovations. Discussion of psychoanalytic topics such as Jungian archetypes, hero myth, ego formation, and whatnot is mostly done through the male perspective. Women always stands just where the man's shadow falls, so that he's only too liable to confuse the two. Then when he tries to repair this misunderstanding, he overvalues her and believes her the most desirable thing in the world. Hence, if we want to understand how the female psyche works, we should not only disregard male perspective, but also modern masculinized female perspective. However, the problem is that in the very act of understanding feminine, we're dragging her psyche in the world of logos and concepts. Thus, like the observer effect in quantum physics, in the very process of observation, we affect the thing observed. Another obstacle is an inherent property of feminine psyche to reach goals indirectly and never name her intentions clearly. Story of Psyche and Eros opens up by introducing opposition between Aphrodite and earthly Psyche, who inadvertently challenges her primacy in the realm of beauty. The story acts as a monomyth for old princess stories that we had watched during childhood. Further, Psyche had to suffer from male projection, as now people started to worship her instead of Aphrodite. This nicely encapsulates the volcanic power of female beauty with its ability to upset social order and Apollonian structure. Two themes that I want to explore is her love affair with Cupid and trials that she has to go through. Psyche is being married to a force that she's unable to see, with whom she falls in love. The fact that she's unable to see her husband points to the power of mystique in feminine psyche. Certain studies show that mystery provokes great interest in females, which probably opens up the space for her unconscious to spill out and hence project its desires. Hence, the right hemisphere dominated feminine psyche is all about context and storyline, which explains why women prefer their love affairs to have a captivating background and context. The latter attaches significance and also moral justification for her engaging in an affair. Now, after she finds out that this shadow is actually the son of Aphrodite, chaos overtakes again. Goddess of love is infuriated and subjects her to very specific trials. Psyche is forced to use the masculine power of division, categorization, extraction, and decontextualization. She has to separate different types of grains, wheats, and legumes into separate abstract categories. Then she must fetch the golden wool from violent sheep. In the third trial, she gets to the river Styx to collect black water and the crystal vessel. Finally, she will have to descend to the underworld to bring dose of beauty from Persephone. In all trials, she is helped by forces of earth such as ants and trees, the same way Snow White integrates the dark forest. Hence, being helped by animals and dwarfs were analogous to hardworking ants in the case of Psyche. Consider that unlike female heroes who are helped by the earthly powers, Heracles is aided by sky gods in his labors. Hence, unlike the female hero journey, male one is characterized not by integration, but rather by series of destructions and overcomings. In Beauty and the Beast, Belle has to accept the fate of being with a monster. However, bearing the burden of fate, she ends up marrying a prince. Psyche, initially subjected to marry a dragon-like monster, marries Cupid in the closing of the narrative. Three key principles of feminine psyche that emerges from this picture are passivity, non-anxiety, and integration. Passivity denotes the act of being subjected to fate and determinism, which carves out a context and storyline for the feminine psyche. Also, it involves the frequently recurring motif of dream state, which will resurface in Mulholland Drive, another chronicle of feminine psyche. Dreaming, or daydreaming if you will, is yet another power of women, with which she can boast extraordinary ability of projection and capacity to be connected with the depth of unconscious. Now, passivity shouldn't be confused with modern understanding of submissiveness, where a female is conceived as a domesticated pet. Passivity is an alternative form of cognition, which is distinct from hunter modality of the active masculine subject. Non-anxiety principle sums up the psychosexual nature of femininity, whereby females are constantly striving to neutralize any possible source of anxiety, which also affects their mate choice. This aversion to anxiety is evidenced by uterine comfort that Psyche experiences in the mysterious place where she has to live with the mysterious shadow. The female characteristic aversion to anxiety probably evolved as a defense mechanism from miscarriage. You see, anxiety and stress is the #1 enemy of getting pregnant. Finally, the integrative power of feminine psyche marks the ability of contextualization and reconciliation. The dark forest of Snow White is not overcome by slaying a dragon, but rather by integrating it into her boundless unconscious. Now I want to look at how femininity was depicted in historical artworks. Unlike Psyche, who balances out her feminine and masculine aspects with the advent of mental consciousness, Virgin Mary tramples the dragon, a symbol of mythic feminine circularity. Feminine sensual three-dimensionality was rejected and substituted by two-dimensional hyper-abstract iconography of Byzantine culture. This allowed for the repression and accumulation of the sexual energy, which will burst in the dawn of Western civilization. Right at the outset, Theotokos of Byzantine culture is transformed into Mater Dolorosa, which marks the eruption of Egyptian Isis and Horus. Here we witness the first transformation from Mary as a vessel of masculine logos to Mary as a lulling mother who cares for the future of mankind, evidenced by her disposition towards the infant Jesus. Hence, in this period, femaleness is conceived as an ideal motherhood. During Black Plague, women had to get naked in front of male physicians, which opened up the space for the re-emergence of archaic femininity. Hence, we witness how a pure abstraction of Mary turns into a more flesh and blood woman in Da Vinci's Madonna of the Yarnwinder. The latter will be substituted by a pure individual, a three-dimensional human female with earthly personality and spiritual depth, before Mona Lisa, the goddess of infinite space, will evolve into the goddess of the silver screen, Marilyn Monroe. We first need to look at the forces operating in the background. Botticelli's Birth of Venus as a symbol of Western feminine sexuality and Michelangelo's virile, muscular, Neanderthal-type woman are two primary sexual modalities of the West. The second is an anthrotype of what I call a menopausal woman, a harsh, wise, and knowledgeable grandmother. These two are temporarily united in Mona Lisa, but will quickly disintegrate. Marilyn Monroe's philosophical significance has to do with the fact that, unlike Mona Lisa, she never got to enjoy the bliss of harmoniously uniting both the feminine and masculine sexual archetypes. Norma Jean, being a totally different person who loved to read Tolstoy and being who she was, had to sacrifice herself to the electronic avatar of the ditzy blonde Aphrodite. She was to be squeezed into the curvaceous South American body, which was completely alien for her actual body composition and fat distribution. She had to be physically stretched to match the qualitative depth of the Mona Lisa with quantitative and spatial gigantism. Hence, in the age of American multiplicity, Monroe became a martyr of an electronic culture, losing her life in a battle against her own electrically generated images. And the Warhol's placement of Monroe against the Byzantine golden background emphasizes her significance as a new age saint of cyberspace, and hence cybersexuality. Warhol's Gold Monroe is a nice example how art can express the zeitgeist of a certain epoch. The importance of art in general, with its unique ability to provide us with snapshots of key cultural transitions, cannot be overstated. Along with sentimental value and aesthetic beauty, there's also an understated aspect: investment. It's easy to see why these artifacts have fetched millions of dollars from museums and collectors. Over time, this art can appreciate in value by the millions. Due to its limited supply and steady demand, and since the value of art isn't necessarily correlated to traditional investments like stocks and bonds, art can serve as an investment that can retain and even gain value during widespread economic crisis, which is one reason why over the last 26 years, art prices have outpaced the S&P 500 by 131%. Until recently, only the wealthiest members of society could utilize art in this fashion. But thanks to today's sponsor, Masterworks, almost anyone can invest in million-dollar paintings for a fraction of the cost. Masterworks buys paintings from legendary artists like Picasso, Monet, and Banksy, and qualifies them with the SEC. I've even linked the offerings in the description for you to check out. In 8 of their last 9 exits, Masterworks has delivered net returns of over 13.9% to their investors. And with nearly 600,000 people signed up, they're looking to acquire art on a weekly basis to meet demand. So unfortunately, there's a wait list. And that's why I'm happy to announce that my subscribers can get priority access by clicking the link in the description. Now, the process of depersonalization and fragmentation of the psyche produced new forces of sexual anxiety. The same way Norse gods constructed the world out of the body parts of the murdered giant Ymir, Monroe's gargantuan electronic avatar produced individual offshoots of varying sexualities. A face-dominated masculine females of Angelina Jolie, Charlize Theron, and Nicole Kidman, body-dominated sexual avatars of Kardashians and pop hip-hop artists, the Instagram age of infinite reproducibles, where copy-pasting the same sexual energy will inevitably lead to the gradual fading of individuality. Now, in the politics section, I want to explore the roots and effects of modern feminism and what social consequences followed from sexual emancipation. Before looking at modern gender feminism, I want to clarify that there are considerable paradigmatic and temperamental differences between French, British, and American feminist schools. For this video, I will only concentrate on commonalities relevant to the video and mainly concentrate on American gender feminism. Right from the outset, beginning with Mary Wollstonecraft up to Judith Butler, we witness a legitimate attempt of hypermasculine, intellectually endowed females to emancipate themselves from the heteromorphic worldview. Freud, however old and grizzled he might be, understood female psychosexuality to be of more bisexual nature. According to him, female possesses a male part, clitoris, and female part, a vagina. Although there were no anabolic steroids in Freud's epoch, we now know that when females take testosterone, their clitoris size increases and starts to resemble a male genitalia. According to Freud, girls experience penis envy out of the realization that mothers didn't endow them with male parts. Girls rebel against this injustice, which paves the way for their psychosexual formation. Conventionally, a female accepts her fate and the object of attachment is shifted from the mother to the father, and hence she escapes from the pre-Oedipal phase and the penis envy is resolved. However, another route can lead to a masculinity complex, where females refuse to accept the condition of lacking a male part. Now, if you think that I'm making a subtle suggestion that modern feminism is an unresolved penis envy, then you are not mistaken. But this is in no way an attempt to ridicule or denigrate feminism. As a matter of fact, there's a whole feminist article which argues that hyena society is a true representation of gender equality. You see, a female hyena has an enlarged clitoris, which can hardly be differentiated from a male hyena's genitalia. Not only that, but she's more aggressive and can easily beat up a male hyena. Now, looking at Mary Wollstonecraft's work, Simone de Beauvoir's Second Sex, and Judith Butler's Gender Trouble, it becomes clear that we're dealing with a Neanderthal emancipation. This is Athena's pretension to be born from the rational head rather than from an irrational uterus. Wollstonecraft's claim that intellect has no gender, Beauvoir's French existentialist ethos of being free from preconceived essence, where one is not born a female but rather becomes one, and Butler's critique of biological sex are all attempts of breaking the carapace of feminine gender roles to which they had been subjected to. Modern feminism is a reemergence of medieval masculine nuns who, unlike Psyche, reject the help of nature in their masculine intellectual endeavors, which are all about division and categorization. Now, the problem with modern gender feminism is that it doesn't really defend anything properly feminine. Rather, it contributes to the project of female masculinization, where women are forced to enter into the discursive practices that have been formed by the very heterosexual males that they have supposedly criticized. And by the way, to make my intentions clear, as someone who is ethnically, linguistically, culturally, genetically, or you name it, is distinct from Western population, I like to state that there's nothing wrong about Western male mind. Along with philosophy, science, medicine, and technology that I enjoy, it has also produced the very paradigm within which feminism and free criticism as such can exist. Now, if females are forced to adopt male social roles and lifestyles, which have been crystallized by masculine or patriarchal consciousness, if you will, how can that be considered to be an act of emancipation? Now, because of where I'm coming from, I don't see anything outlandish about females taking on conventionally masculine roles. In Georgia, females have a long tradition of being involved in politics, sciences, and sports. The existing president is also a female. There are rumors going on that the secretary of the Georgian Patriarch, who is the official head of the church, possesses immense political power. The golden age of Georgia is considered to be a period when it had a female king. Some records claim that she participated in combat during wars. So women having their strong masculine side is nothing out of the ordinary. However, what's unjustified in modern gender feminism is the very thing that it allegedly opposes, namely the Western patriarchal consciousness. Instead of saying that there is a substrata of masculine females who do not feel comfortable in conventional gender roles, gender feminism claims universal validity in its social constructivist assertions. So, for example, if you believe that Selma Hayek is a victim of being subjected to artificially constructed feminine social roles in the same manner as someone like Judith Butler would be, then you are gravely mistaken. But as Oswald Spengler maintains, it is essential for the Western intellect to claim universal validity and project one's world feeling onto the whole world. Now, the reason why American feminism is completely distinct from European one is because it emerged out of the multiplicity that characterizes the US. A country where people from different ethnic backgrounds and hence different temperaments come together to partake in building a certain political project. Judith Butler states herself that the gender trouble arose as a response to witnessing how her Jewish parents struggled to adopt the American Hollywood gender standards that were completely alien for them. Hence, gender confusion is inevitable in a society where different people have to adopt the same gender roles. However, exploiting this situation of multiplicity to claim that therefore different gender temperaments have no biological reality is pernicious, to say the least. There is a scientific evidence suggesting that non-classical adrenal hyperplasia, which is more prevalent in certain populations, masculinizes female nervous system and might influence intellectual formation. Lastly, the prime question of sexual revolution, if males can do it, why can't we do the same, is another continuation of forced penis envy. This is a situation where females whose unconscious is masculine and whose conscious side is feminine have to stand upside down and adopt masculine roles. This inevitably leads to chronic stress, as now a female has to live in the shadow of the opposite sex. Why is it that female masculinization and hence the ability to take on conventionally masculine roles was only possible through technological advancement? In other words, why is female emancipation equivalent and coexistent with the novel power of controlling pregnancy and menstrual cycle through technological means? I completely support and endorse the right of any female to engage in any discipline one chooses, but to think that the majority of women crave to fully take on masculine lifestyle is completely baseless. Now, feminine intellect and masculine intellect are not sex-specific. There are males who are interested in humans and are conventionally right-brainers, trying to synthesize knowledge rather than engaging in hair-splitting, decontextualized analytic thought, and there are females with masculine intellect of division and separation. However, what feminism does along with the industrialization of sexuality is that it basically cancels the very idea of feminine psyche. The popular notion that feminists aim at feminizing men and making them weak is rather a superficial view. I would maintain that what we perceive as male feminization is an attempt of masculine females to even out the strength of animus in males and females. To achieve this goal, not only male feminization but also female masculinization has to take place. What this process is leading to, I think, is already visible in the modern sexual market. Because you can never get rid of biology, this process results into a pre-societal polygamy, where females with high sexual value would mate with only specific minority of hyper-successful males, which creates a whole subpopulation of disregarded men, whose repressed sexual energy will resurface in a very Freudian fashion. Thinking that monogamy, which by the way is the product of the prefrontal cortex responsible for self-restraint, is just a social construct is another grave mistake. The idea that humans didn't evolve to engage in monogamous lifestyle suffers from the two false presuppositions. First is what I call monkeys in suits approach, where we're led to believe that evolution had stopped 40,000 years ago, and hence supposedly humans who are adapted to savanna have to live in a completely alien and artificial world, as if extraterrestrials dropped the civilization and corporate world on us. How the hell do we understand science or come up with the technologies with the brains of our ancestors that supposedly have not undergone major changes in the last 50,000 years? The second false presupposition is to believe that humans need to conform to whatever conception of nature one has. Well, by this monkeys in suits logic, I guess it's not natural to create automobiles which require long-term planning, dedication, and delayed gratification. All of these are also a principle in building a long-term monogamous relationship, which in no way divorces from the civilizational feats that we all enjoy. Now, monkeys in suits approach is actually quite widespread. Harari, who authored the popular book Sapiens, claims that humans of Upper Paleolithic were already able to understand theory of general relativity. Now, getting back to the topic of gender, let's answer the question, what is a woman? A woman is a member of the species Homo sapiens with the root capacity to produce an egg cell. However, because Homo sapiens boasts the most complex nervous system, it is perfectly possible and evident that there are and could be women with socially unexpected neurological makeup. The same way you have normal heterosexual males who are obsessed with spirituality, magic, and mysticism, things that are conventionally attributed to femininity. Hence, I want to sum up this chapter in the unified principle of mismatch, where feminine psyche is forced to squeeze itself into a completely alien territory. This process is considered to be an act of emancipation. After Nietzsche's enunciation of the death of God, humans have been left against the mute and morally inert celestial spaces. Two routes opened up to refill the vacancy left by the absent meaning center. One is back to nature philosophy championed by Nietzsche, as he understands Übermensch to be the meaning of the earth, and the second route was to clean the slate and open up the space for social engineering and remodeling being into the endless becoming. This is the social constructivist route championed by Marxism and later by gender feminism. The first existential path was degraded into the desperate attempt of society to put God's word in nature's mouth. Evolutionary sciences try to feel the dread of moral shelllessness by searching for inherent moral instincts of compassion and altruism in Homo sapiens. Science tries to find the preconceived notions of justice in the animal kingdom, extinguishing our fears of being left without moral sense. Second path of the blank slate, championed by a very specific substrata of females with hypermasculine intellects, opened up the space of malleability and infinite becoming. Body is now a text which can be constructed, reconstructed, or deconstructed by the socio-political forces within which it acquires an ontological status. Hence, this is the world of semiotic free play, where fixed meaning systems have been liquefied. A question, what is a woman, can only exist in the age of existential confusion, where nothing can be taken for granted. Unfortunately, female sexuality has been exploited in both cases. In the first case, which reconnects us back to nature, suffers from easot distinction. A left-wing author can write a book about how polyamory and having sex with multiple men is perfectly natural. Whereas on the other hand, the opposite side will tell you that female sexuality is primarily of monogamous nature. Whereas as males they can have as much sex with different women as they choose. Well, you see, when nature becomes the prime authority of how things ought to be, it allows people of various a priori prejudices to conceptualize what's natural and what's not as they choose. The problem with appeal to nature fallacy is that in the domain of cultural, it simply doesn't matter what's natural or what's not. We're completely justified in the pursuit of understanding how things are or came to be, but how things ought to be is a domain of the cultural. Hence, what's natural has nothing to do with what's right. It could perfectly be natural to kill the children of your enemies or engage in genocidal activity, or let's say dehumanize people coming from different racial or ethnic backgrounds. In Aboriginal tribes, most often than not, tribesmen believe that only they are humans, whereas strangers are not. The famous love hormone, or cuddling hormone if you will, the oxytocin, also has a dark side. It decreases prosociality when you are competing against strangers and enhances gloating when your team is successful and enemies have failed. It basically intensifies the us versus them mentality. Hence, nature or the world of biology and chemistry are neither moral or immoral, but rather amoral, as it is essentially beyond good and evil. The philosophy of human dignity and human rights is in no way written in our DNA. So trying to consult quote-unquote nature in an attempt to situate female sexuality in the modern world is like trying to find a black cat in a dark room that isn't there. The second route, which leads us to the so-called sexual revolution, can be encapsulated in the principle of my body, my choices. This phrase nicely illustrates what Lion McGilchrist understands as a left hemisphere domination, where the sense of wholeness has been completely lost. Here we witness an obscure combination of Cartesian atomistic individualism and body without organs philosophy. The latter, adopted by females, puts them into a condition of constant becoming and rejection of boundaries. The former creates an illusion of consumerate sense of belonging, where bodies can be owned like an inanimate object. You see, in Homeric Greece, there was no such thing as mind-body distinction the same way we understand it. by adopting a view that your body belongs to you, as if there is a clear demarcation between you and your body, sets up a very specific rules, whereby your body can be exploited and owned by other people. Female sexuality in modern times is what Martin Heidegger calls the standing reserve. It has turned into a field, a sort of stadium, where politics is playing out. This leads to the further atomization and seclusion of sexuality. In my other video, I talk about how sexual objectification of female sex follows from reducing the wholeness of female individuality to its constituent parts. If we are to live in a society where bodies are understood as something that can be owned, then it naturally follows that there can be such things as girl collection and pre-societal reemergence of harems, where female sexuality is inframed to function in a very specific and circumscribed fashion. Now, the atomization and hence masculinization of female sexuality is also evident in the self-absorbed notion of beauty. Now, some women who claim that they put on makeup just for themselves and out of sheer self-respect are often criticized, countering it by saying that in reality they actually do it for men. Now, that's not the issue here. Women, as any other person with self-respect, can groom herself just to feel good. The problem here is that even in this case, it is still a social act, and there's nothing wrong with that. You see, in reality, we do not live in a Hobbesian understanding of society, which is composed of atomized units or isolated islands without connections. Rather, our whole being is a set of multiple interconnections and relations, which make up the social fabric. Female beauty, as every other property of humaneness, including male one, acquires its ontological status in the social gaze. The same way subatomic particles acquire their mass in Higgs field, we also gain the sense of inherent value in the field of social gaze. No wonder why Sartre believed that gaze of other people is the very essence of hell. It's only through human interaction and exchange of recognition that things like sexuality can acquire its meaning. And there's nothing wrong with that. Hence, modern female sexuality is presented with three major challenges. First is its derolding, where the female body is turned into a standing reserve, like a river whose energy can be transmuted into a usable material to power up anything one desires. This is maintained by the body without organs approach and hypertrophied sense of mind-body distinction. The second, which is surely interconnected with the commodification of the female body, is an industrialization of sexuality. Hence, plastic surgery and breast augmentation could only exist in a world where flesh and blood is inframed into a dead object. Same way you own a computer which you can upgrade to have a higher memory capacity, your body can also be subjected to technological manipulation. And the third is the danger of new age anti-femininity, which stems from the masculinization of female sexuality. If you adopt a view that female sexuality can function the same way as male sexuality and that there is no biological or cultural constraint to it, then you inevitably enter a world where masculine psyche is dominant. The latter you see is interested in objects, and hence you can become one amongst many toys the masculine psyche can entertain himself with. Also, I want to make sure that I'm not talking about masculine psyche in its efficient modality, but rather I'm referring to modern monkeys in suits understanding of masculinity. Hence, for the closing of the video, I want to make it clear that the world where femininity becomes masculinized and hence will be understood as an inanimate object which can be used as a political power, sex object or just a reproductive medium, is a world of brutality, the world of pure surfaces with no depths, and the world of carcasses without organs. Hence, I take modern virilization of female sexuality to be one of the prime cancers of existing society, which can benefit everything and everyone but females.